Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the headlines. I'm your host, Margaret Matibiri. Today in the studio, I have Member of Parliament for Chegutu West, Honorable Dexter Nduna. Honorable, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much, Maggie.
Okay. I also have Makomborero, Haruzivishe, and MDC activist. Makomborero, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Honorable Nduna, you have made headlines after you said any citizen who calls for sanctions must be sentenced to death by a firing squad. Honorable, can you take us through to that?
Yeah, so that I do not look like I'm parroting, if I can maybe put across to you something that I prepared as a result of the headlines that I'm hitting. I hope I find the audience out there. Well, let me begin by expressing both my pleasant surprise and appreciation at the attention that my utterances whilst debating the National Assembly have drawn from both the generality of Zimbabweans and renowned business people alike. Both the support and the criticism for my statements that those who call for sanctions must be given nothing less than a death sentence are welcome, as I am a firm believer in the right to freedom of expression in Zimbabwe, which right I believe I duly exercised. It is unfortunate, though, that some of the criticism has transcended from the level of ideas and opinions to personal vitriol, which again I will take in my stride. That is the ban of a public life and the servant leadership, a role that we exercise as representatives of the people. Be that as it may, Maggie, I feel it would be important to contextualize my contribution so that it is not taken out of context. First of all, it is said that some of us still practice calculated denialism where, for one reason or another, we attempt to deny the existence of sanctions illegally imposed on Zimbabwe by the Americans at the behest of our very own sons and daughters of the soil, who called and tragically continue to call for them. This is despite the fact that those countries that imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe have acknowledged and affirmed the imposition of the very same sanctions that some of us continue to deny. I am heartened, though, that despite such spirited denials, renowned business people such as Clive Masiwa have publicly voiced their acknowledgement of the existence of these debilitating sanctions and called for their unconditional removal. Anyway, I digress. The point I'm making in putting across my views that those who call for sanctions on this country must be punished, and for that matter by death sentence, was that there must be a deterrent punitive measure upon those who bring suffering upon the people of Zimbabwe. The ordinary man might not know it, Maki, but companies have closed down, livelihoods have been lost, breadwinners have turned destitute overnight because of the effects of these sanctions. Potential doctors, engineers, economists who can turn around the fortunes of this great country and nation have had their futures destroyed because a father or mother or brother or sister who was paying their fees have been retrenched because of the adverse impact of these sanctions on the companies, particularly those involved in the export business. Some have worked diligently for a whole month or rather months without pay because the proceeds from their exports have been frozen in some discreet offshore account due to these sanctions. It is sad, however, nay tragic, therefore, to hear one ignorantly saying these are targeted sanctions and that have no effect on the ordinary man. Some once thriving companies have failed to retool and recapitalize because their funds have been frozen and have resorted to downsizing because of the high cost of production from archaic, moribund, dilapidated and disused and old equipment. And one has the temerity to say sanctions have no impact on the ordinary man. Given this brief synopsis, Maggie, it is clear, therefore, that despite misconceptions to the contrary, these illegal sanctions have destroyed many promising future. This is why, quite simply put, I maintain and continue to maintain that those who call for the imposition of sanctions on their own country and on their own countrymen are no different from the cold-blooded murderers who deserve the death sentence. The only difference is that they do not wield the power of the knife or the gun, but that of the tongue. My clarion call is that such unpatriotic Zimbabweans who perform a brazen kind of lyrical genocide on their own countrymen should never go unpunished. Our very own constitution provides the arsenal for their prosecution as enshrined in section 3.2, which provides that one of the founding principles and values upon which our nation is built is that of the respect of the people of Zimbabwe, from whom the authority to govern is derived. It does not need a rocket scientist to see that a call for sanction is a flagrant disrespect for the people of Zimbabwe. The punishment may not of necessity be the death sentence, but it should be punitive enough to be deterrent. If you think the punishment does not meet the crime, just ask one Daniel Nemukuyu, who was rendered destitute overnight as the company he worked for over 25 years folded due to an unfortunate, regrettable impact of sanctions. You will definitely get a clearer and unequivocal answer.
Okay.
I rest my case.
Interesting, Honorable. But then I'll get back to you. You have sort of disassociated yourself from the death penalty, so it seems like now you're saying anything along those lines, but not necessarily the death penalty. I'll get back to you on that. And Makomborero, what do you think about the utterance that was made by the Honorable Member of Parliament?
Well, I first want to make it clear that it's just like the rest of Zimbabweans do not condone sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
But however, I'm also not shocked by the utterance by Honorable Nduna.
You're not shocked?
I'm not shocked.
Okay.
Especially considering the party that he comes from.
Okay.
The issue of killing people and shooting them, we also anarchist. Mm-hmm. He himself is actually discharged a firearm, I'm sure, during your primary elections back in May. It's before the public record. So I'm not shocked, though, but I think we need to put things in correct perspective,
okay.
Issues in correct perspective. The biggest sanction that we have is by Zimbabweans against Zimbabweans.
Okay, can you get deeper into that? Can you clarify on what exactly you mean by that?
Yeah, I can begin with, yes, we blame sanctions, but we have had diamonds ever since back in the 2000s, the beginning of the 2000s. We have had diamonds in Charles or etc. Those diamonds were being sold in the national market. Okay. But where did those diamonds go? How did they contribute to our national fiscus? They disappeared. It was corruption. It had nothing to do with sanctions whatsoever. We go to issues to do with corruption which goes day in, day out. Mm-hmm. For example, ever since the so-called new dispensation, when it came into power in last year in November, up till now, already 5 billion is vanished, was borrowed from the domestic, which ballooned the domestic debt. Mm-hmm. What was it used for? Where did that money go? It's a sanction on its own, which you cannot blame the national community or whatsoever. Then the third and most critical issue is that, yes, we may say people call for sanctions, but when you kill people, like how they came sanctions, but we need to go back. People were being killed for simply embracing the movement for democratic change.
So in other words, you're basically saying it's okay for any citizen to call upon sanctions if there are reasons to do that? Is that what you're saying? If I hear you correctly.
I'm not saying it's okay. Why? Because it is NPF that is calling for sanctions.
Okay.
By killing people in front of cameras, the international community interferes with sanctions. That's calling for sanctions.
Okay.
By burning people's houses simply because they support an opposition party, that's calling for sanctions. By getting people disappearing, the likes of Ita Itamar and Paul Chisuze, having them disappear simply because they support values of democracy and human rights, that's calling for sanctions. So actually, by prescribing, I think it's suicide of him to actually prescribe a live firing or shooting, because it's them who call for sanctions.
Okay.
So they're just telling us that no, we want to commit mass suicide.
Okay, Makomborero. I want you to give me a brief answer to this question.
Yeah.
How do you think anyone who calls for sanctions upon this nation must be punished? What do you think is the proper punishment for that?
According to our constitution, there is no such crime as calling for sanctions.
Okay.
But if someone does corruption, they should be arrested. They are the cause of law.
So in other words, you're saying our constitution does not cater for that specific section?
Yeah, there's nothing good to be like that. But if someone kills people, they send to go to prison. Group is there.
Honorable, what do you have to say about the contributions that Makomborero has made?
There's three roles that a national member of the National Assembly has when they come to Parliament. One is the legislative, to make laws for the good governance and order of the people of Zimbabwe. The second one is the representative role, where I come from, and the third one is the oversight, to interrogate the manner the executive carries out its mandate. This is done through the system of the committee systems and putting across of motions and all that, in order that you make sure that you skew the debate towards a certain inclination towards those three pillars. That said and done. I want my dear brother Makomborero to actually make some reference to whatever he's asserting to, because anything that is not supported at law or otherwise by some documentation.
Honorable, I think you are running away from the question that I'm asking.
It should actually be taken with the contempt that it deserves. He spoke of the diamonds. Before 2000, we had ACR, which is part of the De Beers or otherwise. ACR used to be in the diamond sector. These are people who were plundering our resources for a very long time, until the Zimbabwean government woke up and said, no, we also need a chunk out of those diamonds. So it is not the Zimbabwean government that plundered the resources. If at all, it is companies that are listed on the London Stock Exchange, Australian Stock Exchange, that plundered those resources. And this ACR is currently perched on Africa's largest gold reserve at Pixton PLS mine, and still listed on the London and Australian Stock Exchange. So that is just to give to actually dissipate the point that he put across. But here is Chris Coons in June now, who provides that an insider view into the issue of sanctions when he was being interviewed at a place such as this one with by CGTN, the Chinese network. He says as long as there are significant sanctions by Western countries, sanctions on Zimbabwe, that raises both direct and indirect challenges for them. It makes it harder for them to access capital, to attract the sort of interest and engagement that would revive the Zimbabwean economy. Zimbabwe argues that sanctions were a responsibility for the IMF turning away the financial support, which is true. And also, the truth is that IMF has withdrawn support. It is only coming back now. It has withdrawn support at the behest of these sanctions.
And then Makomborero was talking about the Constitution, and my question was this: is there a certain part of the Constitution that directly looks into the issue of anyone who calls for sanctions on the nation? That was the question.
Okay.
Then also, another thing, he also made a contribution where you say that the greatest sanctions that can be put upon a nation are those done by the politicians or the political players in that particular nation, and he has made reference to the issue of diamonds, and it's a general understanding that we lost 15 billion in diamonds, and no one has said anything about that. Can you respond to that?
This is an assertion that we have lost 15 billion in
So
diamonds.
the former president Robert Mugabe, when he said 15 billion was lost, he was lying.
This is the second republic of this new dispensation. So I will not speak, I will not drive going forward whilst looking in the rear view mirror. It's
so
not
basically you
about,
cannot comment on that.
Certainly I won't comment about that, but I'll say to you what it is that we need to adhere to. It is issues that are going to get Zimbabwe forward. And when we talk of the Constitution, the values and principles of the Constitution meant that we adhere to the ethos and values of making sure that we respect the people who have given us the power to govern. So these people have got their rights in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution, that are enshrined: right to life, right to health, which have been impeded upon by the imposition of these sanctions. Be that as it may, we need to align our laws to that Constitution, because all nations, they are upheld, they're looked at by the way they conduct themselves, or by the way they uphold their constitution. So we need to uphold our constitution by making sure that we adhere to the rights of the people of Zimbabwe by not calling for sanctions.
Okay, gentlemen, there has been so much talk of sanctions. And educate me a bit. What are the sanctions, and what are the current sanctions that Zimbabwe is under? Because I think these are some of the questions that people have been asking on social media. What are the sanctions, and how do they affect the livelihoods of the general citizens?
Yeah, these sanctions, largely if you check under SETERA, they restrict people who have been pinpointed to have committed crimes against humanity from traveling abroad, doing business with the countries that have imposed those sanctions, and also some of the sanctions extend to their companies, that they should not get those economic privileges. And unlike what he was mentioning of companies shutting down, it's pure mismanagement and economic failure by the government.
So you think
even if you check in the 1992 after ISAP, people were retrenched, companies shut down, there were no sanctions.
Do you think the sanctions must stay?
These sanctions?
Do you think it's of any value if the sanctions are lifted?
The only value that will get if these sanctions are lifted is that the current failed leaders who have run down this economy will have no other excuse.
Okay, so basically you're saying it's okay for the sanctions to stay the way they are right now. And what of the general populace, considering that you're an activist for the opposition? We understand that opposition is there for the needs and putting the people first. But then,
yeah, to put it on record, I think at the beginning of my submissions, I said I do not condone sanctions.
Or you do not?
I do not condone sanctions.
Is that a position that you hold as an individual, or that's a position that you hold as your party and as part of that group of activists?
It's a condition that I hold as an individual and also as a group where I come from. Okay. Because we are against sanction of ZANU-PF.
So just to get this straight, you're saying a group like the group. I think when you say group, you mean that political activism group, which is MDC, where you come from. Yeah, you do not have a problem with the sanctions.
Yeah, the MDC Alliance surely does not want the sanction that ZANU-PF is upon the people of Zimbabwe.
So if you do not want a certain political party,
is the sanction? These sanctions are there because of ZANU-PF.
No, my question is this. My question is this. We have been made to understand that these sanctions at some point affect the livelihood of the general populace. And you are saying that it's your position that you do not condone these sanctions being put in place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm sure to take it back to my submission. Mm-hmm. These sanctions did not just come there, or some other foreign country came and said, I will bring sanctions to Zimbabwe. These sanctions ZANU-PF, it killed people. ZANU-PF
No,
committed atrocities against the people.
We are saying this. We are not talking of the sanctions by ZANU-PF.
Yeah.
We have heard that Zimbabwe is under sanctions. We have heard that, which is why we cannot do trade with other foreign countries, right? And these are the sanctions that we are talking about.
Zimbabwe.
These are the sanctions, not the sanctions that you are alluding to, not the sanctions that you are alluding to. We're talking about the sanctions that are there as of this minute.
Yeah, boss, to be honest, I think we need to put it on record. To be honest, when we have people marauding, killing people within the country, when the only form of punishment that we can at least get is them being restricted from going to other foreign capitals to buy using the money they steal here, to buy and spend the money that they steal from us, the taxpayers. Obviously, the people are justified in as far as welcoming such measures. So
interesting contributions. Yeah. Honorable, I think you just heard what he said. Do you have anything that you'd like to comment on that?
Certainly, the difference between me and him, I make reference to how the sanctions have affected the business and the economic development of this nation. One such firm, which was Industrial Development Corporation, a wholly state-owned enterprise which was under sanctions until 2016. At that time, IDC had interests in broad range of Zimbabwean companies. In 2013, IDC successfully sought a loan from PTA Bank, Preferential Trade Area Bank, for Olivine, but the $2 million was seized by the United States Office of Foreign Assets Control, that is OFAC. The money was to be used for plant rehabilitation and raw materials. IDC has since divested from Olivine without getting that $2 million US. IDC lost over 20 million to seizures by OFAC. Zimbabwe Fertilizer Company, one of the subsidiaries, the $5 million frozen. This contributed to the firm failing to produce enough fertilizer for farmers. In addition, IDC of South Africa granted IDC an $18 million loan but turned down a second tranche, afraid of falling foul of the US. Earlier in 2016, to avoid offending the US Treasury, Standard Chartered Bank, which you know, ordered IDC to close its accounts with the bank. Standard Chartered Bank fears were not unfounded. Barclays Bank PLC paid a $2.5 million settlement to the US Treasury after processing 159 transactions worth $3.4 million between 2008 and 2013. The transactions were mostly for its clients, IDC, and its subsidiaries. Okay. Some estimates that the state enterprises account for 14% of Zimbabwe's GDP, making them a key part of the economy. At peak, they made up 40% of the economy. These are state enterprises. Typically, state utilities are key to the economic's growth and largely depend on foreign loans for their capital expenditure. Yeah, such loans are mostly dried up, partly due to OFAC restrictions.
Let's be realistic, Honorable. Firstly, the current suffering with the Zimbabweans is having the government twice in a decade coming to just raid people's bank accounts. Just say you no longer have money.
It has not been decided.
Yeah, you know, I cannot trust your template. Nor can I trust your weight. Because after all, you are in Parliament.
Maybe you'll trust this. At a public meeting with Barack Obama in 2014,
let me finish.
A young Zimbabwean techpreneur,
no, but
Chingodzo made an appeal to the US
you cannot come and read.
Gentlemen, let me jump in right now. Okay.
That's propaganda. The real sanctions that we are facing here is a government that didn't come, introduce bond notes, and then take all our forex, and then start behaving as if we are breaking when we go to the bank. We have workers, they work every month, they don't get their salaries in full, they don't get their bonuses. Those are the sanctions that are making us suffer.
Yeah, if we can make reference to that, like this is something that we see in our day-to-day lives, like the rates, the US dollar versus the bond note, it's just been skyrocketing. It's just been skyrocketing. And what are you doing?
And also to answer to that, we have the President Emerson Mnangagwa saying they've passed the sanctions. They said a US firm is actually poured in through a mega deal, billions of US dollars. And we have had mega deals being signed by international companies and international governments. So it defeats all the propaganda that you are saying. It means, where is the money? I think that's the greatest sanction that we should be debating about. There are mega deals that are being signed. Where are they? Since last year, we've been told that mining companies in Mashingo by Mr. Nangagwa himself, President Nangagwa, that they will be opening, they will be employment.
He's
But where are they?
excellent.
Where are those companies? Where is that employment?
Okay, gentlemen.
And if we check it, the mega deals can reach even up to 100 billion if we were to check ZANU-PF the past year and this year. That is a sense. Where are they? That's the biggest sanction. And also, the issue, we may try to run away from reality, but we have had drama happening within the folds of the RPZ. Senior members of the party, and including the officials of the RPZ, speaking of cartels, mafia style, looting money within the RPZ, through the mafia networks. I think those are things that we should be worried about. Because, yeah, we may go try and cry for sanctions, but the reality is more money has been lost through corruption, more money has been lost through money laundering, more money has been lost through
Makomborero, if I can stop you right there. So, Strive Masiwa is on record saying that sanctions should be lifted.
Strive Masiwa,
Do you think he's saying this as a genuinely concerned citizen, or he's saying it out of his business interest?
No, it's out of business interest. Strive Masiwa, if he's genuine, should come back to Zimbabwe. I heard you were saying Mr. Mnangagwa is sincere about reforms. He should come back to Zimbabwe. It's been 18 years since he was out of Zimbabwe. Strive Masiwa, he's out of touch with the realities on the ground. He's only concerned with making profits. He's only concerned with his profits. And let's not forget that he's beneficiary to these cartels. While we list them, we have cartels within the fuel sector. We also have cartels within the telecommunication sector. Remember Strive in 2016, he teamed up with the police, the sheriff, and to go and raid the source office, which had published and exposed the deals that under dealings that they were doing in the RPZ on treasury bills. They are the ones who were facilitating a domestic borrowing by the government, which has now ballooned to over 6 billion in Zimbabwe. So he's after profit, and he's out of touch with our lived realities.
What do you think concerning what Strive Masiwa said?
He's progressive. I think he's a champion and a luminary for economic emancipation and development. And when you want to advertise a cabbage as opposed to advertising meat, you need certainly to say why you think people should eat cabbages in order to have square chests and all that. But really, it will be an uphill task if you have to go against meat and advertise a cabbage. However, I want to say, Clive Masiwa coming in as he does, a businessman of repute and somebody who is quite progressive, not only domestically, but globally, it is really, really prudent. It is really key for such actors, economic actors, to make sure that they speak with a voice that is going to make sure we come out of the current doldrums of economic sabotage dictate and saboteurs that is currently bedeviling the country. I just wanted to give a little synopsis as to how these sanctions came about and put names and faces to it. These are people that are resident in America, who are in positions of authority, who are legislators, who gave breath and life to these sanctions, coupled with some of our own who are in Parliament, one Tendai Biti and one the late Richard Changirai. You will want to know that one late.
Late.
Yeah, he's late. He's not in Parliament. You said.
Yes, I said the one who is in Parliament is one Honourable Tendai Biti and one Mr.
Let's not speak ill of the
Yes, no, certainly I will not speak ill of him. Helms is one of the longest serving US senators. He was a key proponent of Zidera. Zidera is this draconian law in 2001. Given this decade-long history of opposition to ZANU-PF in particular and African nationalism in general, his role was hardly surprising. At the center of that original Zidera bill, just as in the current version, was the issue of land. Helms had been one of the biggest supporters of Rhodesia and the UDI and had ironically campaigned for the lifting of sanctions against Ian Smith's administration. Back in America in 1964, Helms had opposed the Civil Rights Act, which removed the discrimination of blacks. This is the type of person that I want you to picture, that speaks to and about imposition of sanctions and draconian economic punitive measures. By any objectivity standard, Rhodesia's elections were free and fair and sanctions had to go. This is what Helms was saying. And Zorewa visited Washington that year and Helms invited to lobby for recognition. This is the type of person that advocated for Zidera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wakabatana together with
I think just to make a
if I can just be allowed to continue. I've given you your opportunity. At the time, despite sanctions on Rhodesia, US corporates like Ford, Standard Oil, General Motors did good business with Rhodesia via South Africa. Helms died in 2008, sadly. One of his prodigies is in consecutive cycles. Jeff Flake of Arizona was there to pick up the pieces. Together with Chris Coons, Flake is one of the key sponsors of the new Zidera Amendment. Just like Helms, he too is a deep conservative. In 1987, Flake testified before the Utah State Senate in support of the resolution in favor of apartheid South Africa, a lobbyist of American mining interests at the time. He said, ironically, given current debates on the impact of sanctions, that he opposed the sanctions on South Africa because they hate ordinary South Africans, because he had business interests there. Earlier this year, it was reported that Jeff Flake's teenage son, so it goes from the parents and to the children. So Tana went by the name Nigga Killer in an online game.
They post YouTube
they will give comments
they will
using the word nigger. Apologize on his son's behavior,
during the press
but the episode was a window to flex conservative. So you can see the type of people
and remember,
if we are
despite
not
being under
careful,
sanctions, Rhodesia under Smith, they never ran the country down. When ZANU-PF took the country in 1980, when ZANU-PF took the country in 1980, remember that Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of Southern Africa. Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of Southern Africa in 1980.
So
despite
the continuation of sanctions, so we want to cut them, to nip them in the bud.
I think what we should be advocating for is observation of human rights. What should be cutting is killing people in front of the national cameras.
Okay,
what
gentlemen, if I may take this opportunity. Honorable, Jacob Mufume asked you to retract your statement about sanctions. What is your comment?
I have read here, Jacob Mufume has not asked me to do anything, but I can tell you this now. Jacob Mufume is the spokesperson and the front foot that MDC thinks they have got. I think they need to change their foot. If he is the face of the MDC, I was with him on radio yesterday, and I think for sure they need to change their foot. I was with their president, Honorable Chamisa, for 5 years, from 2013 to 2018, in the National Assembly. I do not think he deserves he deserves better. He does not deserve to have people that speak on his behalf, like Jacob Mafume. But he has not asked me to retract. If at all, the journalist yesterday asked me if I could tone down on the sentence. Look, I'm not a judge, I'm not a jury. I'm just proposing, if this, as I have said in my opening statements, sounds too harsh, it's not yet even passed. I'm just proposing that there needs to be a deterrent sentence and sanction for those that are calling for sanctions on Zimbabwe. You have seen how they have definitely transgressed on the people of Zimbabwe. Not only for now, but in the future.
Honorable, if I may ask, are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
So you do not think that the death penalty is a bit harsh?
As I have alluded to, it is not Mafume who has asked me to tone down.
No, I'm just asking a general question. Don't you think that you proposing for that death penalty is not a bit harsh?
It is a bit harsh. If it does send a message to those who would be offenders and those, I ask, if it is not a death penalty that is going to be given as sanctions, that it should be applied retrospectively, including to those that asked for the original sanctions. And for those that are going to ask for sanctions in the future, certainly the proposal should still stand. Okay.
So, Mako, another question for you. So, we've had issues about a character named Queen Bee. We've heard that he controls the economy, and we've seen that after the Queen Bee character was put in the public domain, there have been buzzes about who this Queen Bee is, and there have been accusations that the country is being led by a cartel.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's reality. Firstly, if him state here, when it doesn't have the mandate from people of Czech to West, it is proof of that cartel.
Okay. Okay. Let me give him time to respond to that. He says you do not have.
And I'm
knowledge is power, and you do not need a rocket scientist to adapt to the ethos and the principles that govern Zimbabwe. There's two people that won the election twice in Zimbabwe, the same elections in 2018, that is His Excellency and myself. First, he annihilated and beat
other members
in 2018, and he also beat him again in the Concord. In Mashonaland West, he got 313,000 votes against 200 or so thousand for Chamisa. I got a big number of votes.
The number?
But then the word on the street is this.
Because you don't even know the number.
It's not the electorate of Tegutu.
No.
But
okay. Yeah, what with the electoral code?
It would be good.
Because no electoral code changes during the election. Actually,
sanctions. And I think he would be more knowledgeable. He would have maybe given a little study to the background of sanctions than the issue
I think from what we have seen in relation to Queen Bee, they are dubious characters who are in Zimbabwe who can order even the killing of people both publicly and privately, like we saw happening, like we're seeing happening here. And I believe that as long as Zimbabweans have this sanction, then these sanctions, ZANU-PF deserve to be sanctioned also. Because you cannot have them doing as they please with people's lives. They have killed many people. And these are things that are on record from Gukura Wundi, the current president of ZANU-PF. Gukura Wundi is a key factor. In 2008, he was the chief election agent of Robert Mugabe. He led a terror campaign in a preemptive coup against the late Morgan Tsvangirai. And right now, he also took power through the gun. He killed people. So the presence of this Queen Bee and also the open for business that they parrot, we see them on a daily basis saying that Zimbabwe was open for business, there's economic boom, but then the ordinary people, the person doesn't see it. So where the sanctions are there, or the sanctions of ZANU-PF always have a negative bearing on Zimbabwe. And so the best thing is that the money is still here. They should not be allowed to freely go in New York or wherever to buy and waste it off. So I think as an honorable member is in Parliament by Okoro Cook, I think he should at least adhere by the Constitution, one, and then two, he should also ensure that the culture of violence, the culture of these live shootings that is advocating for ends now. It belongs to the Stone Age era, not now. We have a judicial system, and even this one is speaking of, it's not even a crime under our laws. If it's a crime, they should report the police. And we know that Paul has been doing crimes, even corruption. They even set up the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. We even have President Nangwa setting up another Anti-Corruption Commission in Teskin's office. But no one has been convicted up to today. And people are being arrested, given bail. It's more of they're actually rewarded. Because if you check, even the case of David Parliamentary, he's rewarded with a post in ZANU-PF. Recently, the expensive vehicles were bought for them. So I think we need to shift our focus in as far as how to value the nation. And quoting Rhodesia, which was actually in terms of its GDP and what it provided economically, far better than now. When even Smith left the country to 18 pence, 1980, Zimbabwe was called the breadbasket of Southern Africa. The British Zimbabwe dollar was called the British pound, stronger than the US dollar. But then, years down the line, corruption, plunder, the abuse of human rights, and everything came us, the products where we are now. And also, having ZANU-PF legislators now blaming us, the victims, for saying, no, we are robbing from you, and you are advocating that we don't go and spend our money abroad. I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, interesting. Honorable, what do you have to say about this issue about the Queen Bee character and the cartels running the country?
I will not spend my effort on the imaginary characters, but I will want to say His Excellency has actually said, let us not look behind, let us continue to forge a way ahead. And in his interview with the Namibian broadcast, he actually put it across that Zimbabwe continues to mourn, if Zimbabwe continues to mourn like we're doing about sanctions from the US, then we would have failed our nation. His strategy now appears to forge closer ties with the BRICS and the other blocs. America is not the only country in the world.
The question, Honorable, is about cartels. The question is about cartels, and I want your personal opinion, not your political party's leader's opinion, your opinion.
Well, certainly, if there is any cartels anywhere, they have no room in Chegu to West constituency, and there's 210 members of parliament. We want to make sure that everybody breaks, closes ranks, and makes sure that there is no cartels. There is no room for corruption. Then,
but
only
electoral corruption.
If you allow me to I respect you, and I ask you to have your own space. And the reason maybe you would want to stay in NDC is so that you can be their spokesperson. There is no room in ZANU-PF for that, but you are invited. Maybe there can be that opportunity. That is it. That's what I can.
And also stop blaming the Americans. When President now offered Trump a golf course. Yes. So if sanctions can allow him to give the President of America a golf course in 5 hours.
So honorable,
if we are to achieve the 2030 middle income economy, as has been alluded to by His Excellency, we need to nip corruption in the bud. My brother Makomborero has spoken so eloquently about Queen Bee and the avoidance of that if we are to grow our economy and have economic development. That is the street, that is very mature. That there was death of maturity yesterday in an interview I had when we had one Mafume. Certainly today's maturity is quite a bar up, and I think he is quite on point if he says we do not want the queen bees, we do not want corruption, we do not want all that. Certainly, I agree with you. Yeah.
In the same vein, Honorable, I appreciate the compliment, but calling for death penalties on national crimes, I'm sure I
agree. It's a bit on the higher side.
Childish to fear of each other.
It's a bit on the higher side. We can tone it down as long as there is some sanction.
So just to pour in water on whatever relationship you guys have going on here, he accused you of being in parliament by hook or crook, and word on the street is that you were not elected to be the member of parliament to be representing Cheput West, and that you discharged a firearm amidst the elections. Can you tell us more about that?
Okay, even if I'm not a court, you've got the you actually have the privilege of having yours truly here in your studio today. So you
which is an honor.
Not from the horse's mouth, but from Honorable Dexter Nduna's mouth. I'll start first and foremost with the discharge of the firearm. All firearms are licensed for the purposes that they are supposed to be licensed for, and they're supposed to be used for the purposes that they're supposed to be used for. I have an abattoir in Mashonaland West Province, in Chegutu in particular, and is the third largest abattoir in Mashonaland West. There is what you call a little like pistol that is going to discharge a bolt, and it goes into and stuns the beast, and before you slaughter it, just to make sure it's just unconscious. If you do not decapitate its head within 10 minutes, it is going to wake up again, and it is
so you're saying this pistol does not kill?
The pistol that I'm talking about is licensed for that purpose. Now the 9mm pistol that I had on the day is licensed for bullion protection. This is one issue, and it's also for self-protection. Accosted, and where you had about 1,500, this was during primary elections. This is nothing to do with the MDC. We had one member who was unconscious, who had been stoned nearly like to death, who I believe, if charges had to go to court today, somebody would be charged with attempted murder. And I had monies that I was supposed to be paying this polling agent and the rest of the other polling agents. And 1,500 people stoning this man, hitting him with sticks, stoning my car, stoning and hitting me with sticks. And I was supposed to just fold my hands, and I've got a 9mm pistol there, not to harm anybody, but to scare them away. I had to pull it out, and I had to fire in the air. By the way, I am a military man of 10 years, and I know you will never point a firearm to a comrade in jest unless your intention is to kill. I have never had any reason to kill anybody, but I know what it is that can happen when you fire in the air. And then the issue that I've now completely annihilated the other protagonist from the MDC. People should not try and score cheap political points. I know for a very fact that they do not love Konjana, the men that they are trying to front for. Who they love is the men that they call Monzora. Monzora is pitted against Chamisa. So there's two camps. There's only one person. There's only one person who loves Monzo, who loves Chamisa to the bone, and that is Charlton Wende. That guy, even the constituency, which was relinquished by Chamisa, by Chamisa,
and Zega admitted that
has been given to Charlton Wende. And now, if you listen to imaginary to imaginary stories and social media, you are going to become like him. There is no time.
But President Kumba is
where there is no time in this world in 2018 that the results of Chegutu West constituency were announced twice. There is no time that ZEC
announced
anywhere to say to Makomborero and his other proxies and the other protagonists that now Dexter Nduna is no longer a member of parliament. It was announced once that he's a member of parliament, and they went to town because of their imaginary result. And like it is going, the sun is going to come out tomorrow. We went to the High Court, the Electoral Court, and one Gift Konjane, who is supported by Monzora. Well, they left him out to dry. Now he has to bear the cost of the legal suit and all that. And it's quite unfortunate that they are now making sure that the issues of their factional politics is now coming down on Konjani like a ton of bricks. It's quite unfortunate.
So which emphasized faction do you belong to?
There is here, I don't know who he belongs to, but he's not a member of parliament, doesn't matter. But the BT and Sikala and all of them, they have gone into parliament at the expense of Chamisa. He didn't know. Now he's fighting for political survival against Monzora, and the battlefield is being fought.
He says Chamisa is fighting for political relevance.
No, but you cannot say that someone
against Monzora. What do you have to say about that? Is there an in-house fight between Monzora and Chamisa?
No, there's no in-house fighting. Chamisa contested the elections to be president, and he won the presidential elections. Monzora went to the elections to be senate, and this is the House of Senate, and deciding his duties very well. So I don't understand him to try to use imaginary factions between the Mixed Alliance to justify his unorthodox entrance into parliament. You raise more questions. Which faction, which MCLI's faction do you belong to?
Okay. So Makomborero, just I think one last question before we round this up. It is common knowledge that activists get paid to get in the streets and round up people to do the tajamugas and what's not because you have the interests of the people at heart. What do you have to say? Have you been paid to become an activist, or are you doing this out of your love for the country?
That's a serious misconception. Let me tell you what gets you into the streets: hunger, unemployment, poverty.
So are you saying there are no activists who get paid?
There are no activists. Those who get paid are not even activists at all. If you are to say the activists who get paid, I'm still to me to.
So you are by no chance in any payroll for anyone getting paid to mobilize the people to say shut down Zimbabwe, do this Zimbabwe. So you benefit whilst the general population
especially where I can make it a bet, especially in my instance.
Okay.
Anyone who can.
Only in your instance.
No, in my fellow colleagues, but I can vouch for myself right now. In this bet that I want to make, if there is anyone with proof or who can allege that they've paid me and prove it to do anything like that, I can give them, I'm sure, 5,000.
So okay, just to talk about this, we've heard of certain characters coming from literally nothing. Then the next moment we hear that they're buying properties in South Africa in certain places because they just get in the political arena and they are activists, getting people beaten up on a daily basis, mobilizing the masses to say shut down Zimbabwe, yet they go home with fat pockets.
I've never heard of such people. If you were to give an example, maybe to make this a matter easier. Because the only people I know buy house abroad, we have a penchant, I bet have buying house abroad, some the government people. Yeah. Even when they were about to be toppled, I'm sure you know that the former first lady even bought houses in South Africa. So,
Honorable.
And that's why they are crying of those restrictions to go abroad. They know they can no longer buy those villas in New York. They can no longer buy those. And it's actually an African problem if you check in terms of corruption. We have had even in Francophone Africa, presidents, their children going to buy houses in France, going abroad to buy fleet of nice cars, expensive cars, having offshore accounts. So I think it's an issue that needs to be confronted at a regional and even continental level.
Okay. Honorable Nduna, we have seen your name in the papers lately over a case in which the Chivayos and the Kadungures, and lately we've seen that Chivayo has been acquitted, that you had dealings with them. And
that's the cartel.
so I can put it across. Is it true that you personally have dealings with the Kadungures and the Chivayos, the socialites? Do you have personal dealings with them, seeing that you allege that you lost close to $50,000 at their hands?
No, thank you. I'll answer it in the best possible way I know how. In my other life, I'm a businessman, and the issues that you speak to and about happened in 2011 and 2012. I only came into Parliament for the very first time in 2013. That is, it might be, I'm not immune to issues to do with cybercrime, and I think that nowadays our courts and everybody else is busy trying to unpack and unravel the issues to do with cybercrime. It's a new phenomenon in our courts, in our jurisdiction, in our police corridors and policing corridors and stuff like that. And the courts and the police are doing quite a good job, because this case, if I remember, it had extraterrestrial or extra. There was supposed to be investigations in other jurisdictions, and I remember the police going to Botswana, going to South Africa, where I banked more than R500,000 to try and unpack and see how monies were being laundered and cleaned and coming back into Zimbabwe as gas. And they have done quite a good job. This is my thinking. So to answer you that I have dealings with these cartels, these people, I think it's a cartel that looks into people's accounts. I'm a genuine businessman, and I do not do dealings in the street. They go into people's accounts, they see which companies got the largest amount of money, and then they cook up their cyber-related criminal, nocturnal activities, and they go to the unsuspecting, innocent citizens and business people, like in the mold of this honorable member seated here. I'm now an honorable member, yes, but in my other life, before I became parliamentarian, I was a business. I still am. I was a businessman, and this is where they happened to pry on my innocence, and they managed to get away with it. I am happy, though, that the long arm of the law in Zimbabwe is finally catching up with them, and it has unmasked these imaginary characters. It's a wonder, and it's actually a wonder to see them seated there in court and looking mesmerized, and you say to yourself, but why did this man have to come and try and swindle me of such monies without having any facial contact, but having interaction only with the computer? So
okay,
certainly unpacking such criminal activities is quite
seeing that
yeah.
you say in another life you are a businessman and you got duped of $500,000. And now you are a member of Parliament. Do you then understand the needs of the general citizen that you are supposed to represent, when in another life you can have 50 million rands? $500,000 in another life. How then do you connect with the general needs of the general populace, where we see an individual or a family surviving on a $300 salary? How do you then connect with this other life? And also on that note, seeing that in another life you're a businessman, I think you can also afford to buy your own car. Does that mean that you're also going to accept the car that the government is supposed to buy for you because you're now a member of Parliament?
I'll start with the last question. These conditionalities, this is the law of the land. We'll deal with what is enshrined in the law of the land. Like I have said earlier, that all countries are upheld, they are looked at in the lens of how they uphold their own constitution. We are all creatures of the constitution. I'm a member of parliament, but I need to adhere to the ethos and values of the constitution. Mind you, for a delimitation that occurred and for the 2013 parliamentary elections, I am supposed to have under my jurisdiction 50,000 electorate, and those people are the reason why I am in parliament. And I might be of a certain stature, a bourgeoisie or otherwise businessman or otherwise, but I relate with the last person in the streets of Chegutu West constituency. Their needs, their wants, their health delivery system, water and sewer reticulation, the last person, including the little child that yearns for free health and free education as enshrined in the constitution. So that really repeals the issue of that if I am of a certain stature that I am, I cannot relate with the last man in the street. I might be the first citizen of Chegutu West constituency, but certainly I owe it all to the electorate, including those that did not vote for me, that are in the MDC fold. And then the other issue of getting a vehicle from Parliament and otherwise, I would do without. I have no problem with that. I got a duty-free certificate in 2013, which I used it to procure a vehicle, and I think I certainly could still use that. What I want to say is, seeing I'm on air and the government of the day could benefit from this. There is more than 20,000 government vehicles out there. There is more than 230,000 vehicles that are unregistered and that are not licensed. I would urge government to make sure that they regulate these vehicles and register them and ensure the 20,000 government vehicles. Government vehicles, as soon as it is bought, it needs to be registered, it needs to be insured, so that when it is involved in an accident, there certainly is a fallback. There is a fallback. Government does not lose money. The recipient of that vehicle does not lose money. So this is my thinking. And whilst we are still on that, I ask that all the revenue generating entities and bodies be computerized so that we can spike revenue generation, stop revenue leakages, and make sure that we increase efficiency in the revenue generating mechanisms. The 4.5 billion US dollars of our economy, of our GDP, certainly is an understatement. We are a multi-billion dollar economy as Zimbabwe. We are endowed with ubiquitous amount of mineral wealth, and 60 to be precise, and of all that, only 20 have been exploited. So we need certainly to increase our budget to $100 billion per se, and we drop our recurrent expenditure enormously. This is my thinking. This because I'm online and I'm on air. I'm just I'm just giving it as a proposal to the Minister of Finance, and as a proposition to the executive to say, if we go this route, we might get out of the doldrums of economic disrepair.
Thank you very much for the contributions. I do hope that you pitch those contributions in Parliament. And I think you find favor with the masses better than the firing squad thing. So we look forward to you pitching those ideas with the Parliament, so that probably we'll see a better Zimbabwe. So
thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Honorable, for joining us today. Thank you, Makomborero, for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Honorable Dexter Nduna, Member of Parliament for Chegutu West, and Makomborero Haruzivishe, an MDC activist. Thank you for joining us.